If I may, I'm William Mitchell. I'm delighted you're here. I'm honored. So many of you here that I know personally are quite accomplished, and I'm honored that you're in my class. Thank you for coming. I usually do this same class each year entitled Your Clients Want the Wow, the Magic, the Hypnotic Phenomenon. And so I usually start, if I may, with just a quick little video. And this is an interview with one of my clients after she had come. And as you'll see, she experienced some hypnotic phenomena.
Yeah, I said, do you want to throw them away?
And she said, no, I want to see if I want them, right?
Yeah.
Tell us what happened when you got home after the session.
Well, when I got home, I was going to smoke me a
She
cigarette.
didn't think she'd been hypnotized.
And I lit the cigarette with no problem. But after I took that first draw, and I tried to get the cigarette back to my mouth, my hand would not let it go. It wouldn't go to my mouth. I could not let. I had a cigarette, and it's going like in all different directions. I could never get it to go in my mouth. So I wasn't going to let that outdo me.
So what did you do?
So what I did was, I took my hand with the cigarette in it, and I tried to guide it to my mouth. So I'm going up to the thing, and I could not get it up. So I said, okay, I'm not going to be outdid. Now I figure out, I've got to do something else. I got to figure out another plan, because plan A didn't work. I'm going to go to plan B. So I go to plan B. I said, well, since I can't get the cigarette to my mouth, I'll take my mouth to the cigarette. So I'm going, and I'm trying to get it to my mouth. And my hand, when our hair would go down, my hand would go farther away from my mouth. I could not get that cigarette in my mouth. And I said, okay, it worked. I had to be hypnotized. 48 years I've been smoking, and today, and then I said, okay, this is what really, really, really got me. Is that I said, for 48 years, I have been a slave to this cigarette. Mm-hmm. Now, my mind and my body is controlling this cigarette, and I do not have to smoke anymore.
That's great. Tell me about when you're done. Many of you have had these experiences personally. I'm very honored Larry Garrett's in my class today. If you don't know who Larry Garrett is, he's one of the greatest living hypnotists. And Larry, just wait real quick. But Larry, when he first got trained, and I don't want to say how many years ago, they hypnotized him. He didn't think he was hypnotized, and they said you couldn't say, what was your first name? Was your first name, Larry?
My first name. Right.
Couldn't say your first name. And he told me about that experience. That was her experience. You know, she couldn't believe she'd been hypnotized. I said, well, maybe it's not. Oh, yes, sir. If it's not on, I apologize. It looks, that's red. The mute button right there. Okay, there we go. That's better. Thank you. Appreciate it, sir. So Larry told that experience, and I think many people had that experience. They don't think they're hypnotizing yet. Larry couldn't get his first name out, couldn't get his first name out. She couldn't get the cigarette to mouth. Actually, there's much more to that video, and really, she was a hypnotist's dream. I mean, I threw all kinds of hypnotic phenomena at her, and pretty much all of them stuck. As a matter of fact, at 2 o'clock, that's the class I'm teaching, is how to make sure your post-hypnotic suggestions stick, how they actually stick. But the reason I got into hypnosis was, my original training is I'm a minister, and I did the traditional, went to college, went to seminary, took churches, and I love the ministry. I'm still a minister. But I went through a divorce, and I'd always done a lot of professional speaking outside of the church, and usually in psychological issues. And so it was answering an ad. I answered an ad in USA Today. They were looking for professional speakers. And so I answered the ad, called the 800 number, and they said, oh yeah, we do weight loss seminars. And we send these people out, and they go to big hotels and get a big crowd of people, and they do weight loss seminars, and we use hypnosis. And I thought, oh, hypnosis, how hokey. You know, oh, that's too bad. You know? And they said, well, hey, you know, we'd like to send you a video of the seminar. So they sent me a video of the seminar, and from a physiology standpoint of losing weight, it was actually very solid. And so I called a psychologist who went to my church, and we had breakfast. And I said, hey, you know, I'm thinking about this. What do you think about hypnosis? And the psychologist said, hey, hypnosis is great. I use hypnosis all the time in my practice. It is not a cure-all. Nothing is. It's not a cure-all. But don't be afraid of hypnosis. So I sent them a video, actually one of my sermons, and they hired me right there watching the sermon. So I guess I can preach. And so they sent me out. After a very, very short week, the guy flew out to Texas. That's where I was living at the time. And we went around, did some seminars, and so at night we'd do the seminar, and then during the day he kind of trained me a little bit. He trained me a lot more about how to do the seminar than he did about hypnosis. I knew just enough about hypnosis to read a script. You know what I mean? I was that good. I could read a script. And so then they sent me out, I'll never forget, to Laredo, Texas, the very first seminar I ever did. And Laredo, they used to have this Holiday Inn. It was a big, tall one. And you could literally, the meeting room was right at the top, and you could look out the window, and there was Mexico right across the river. And so 60 trusting souls come in, not knowing I've never hypnotized anybody in my life. And I give my seminar, and I give my little pre-talk, and now it's time to dim the lights, and I pull my little pen light out. I've got the podium, and I'm reading the script, and I look out in the audience, and they are like this. I mean, head between the knees, arms hanging down the floor, and I'm going, good script. That's a great script. And what happened was that company would send you pretty much Texas up to Minnesota, then back down again, take a few weeks off, then you do it again. About once a quarter, you'd hit these same towns. And so the second run through, you know, all these people, I go back, had lost all this weight. They're coming back to the seminar because they got back in free the second time. They lost. I'm going, wow, it was a good script. That was a really good script. But what started happening during these seminars very quickly was I started experiencing weird things in the audience, which I learned later was hypnotic phenomenon. I didn't know it, and actually the people that ran the company I worked for, they didn't know it either, because I found out later. The owner of that company had basically taken NGH certification training, started the company, and made millions. And but the point is, he didn't really know that much about hypnosis. And so we'd have these conference calls once a week. There'd be 5 other people doing what I did out there, and we'd be on the phone, and I'd say, well, look, in the seminar, these people are throwing up. They're doing all kinds of strange things, and they're going, did you change the script? I said, no, I don't know anything. I'm reading the script. But the difference was the people in my seminars were hypnotized. You know the difference? They were hypnotized. It wasn't light hypnosis either. They were hypnotized. And they were deeply hypnotized, and so we saw a lot of hypnotic phenomena. Well, that's when I said, I've got to get more training. So I kind of went on my little journey that I'm still on today to learn more and more. I just last bar, I talked to a couple of people from here in the area. They're sitting right here. Raise your hands. Yeah, right there. And I learned a lot last night at the bar. I'm learning all the time. Let me tell you. If you haven't talked to Larry Garrett, if you haven't talked to some of these people in this room, Tommy B, if you haven't talked to these experts, Mark Hallett's here, talk to those people. You learn so much because who knows it all, right? Who knows it all? We do not know it all. And I'm still on that journey of learning, but over time I got better and better, and I finally realized, and that's the reason they didn't encourage you to learn too much for that seminar company. They knew if you learned too much, you didn't need them, you'd leave, and that's what I did. So and I started my own company. So anyway, that's the way the world works. So what I want to talk today about is hypnotic phenomenon. Your clients, when they come for hypnosis, they want the wow. They want to see stuff like this. They aren't going to a psychotherapist unless you are a psychotherapist. Now, if you're a psychotherapist or you're a medical professional and you're doing hypnosis as part of your scope of practice, that's great. The expectation changes. But I teach my students that if they come to you as a hypnotist, they're looking for, 1, hypnosis, and 2, they're really looking for hypnotic phenomena. Would you agree? Yeah. That's what they want. I mean, that's why they chose you. And so it's very important to know what hypnotic phenomenon is and what you can do. And there's so many potential uses for it. I'll never forget, several years ago, I eventually came in 2003 to Springfield, Illinois, and kind of quit doing the group seminar, started doing a one-on-one. And the one-on-one, and it was really fun. I still do this day. I love it. And but you get these people come in. This one lady came in. She was getting her doctorate in audiology there in Springfield. And 5 years prior, she'd gone to a group seminar. She quit smoking, hadn't smoked for years. But in the last year, she, under the pressure of her doctorate, had started smoking again. She'd gone to 2 other hypnotists and said, here's what he did in the seminar. Here's the exact technique. Can you do that? And they go, oh, no, that's old-fashioned hypnosis. We don't do that. And I said, well, what's the technique? And she goes, well, he said, now whenever you think about smoking a cigarette, you'll take a deep breath, hold it, and then exhale, and you'll remember and forget to remember to smoke. You ever heard that one? Yeah, Erickson? Yeah. And I went, I can do that. Thank you very much. You just gave me a great technique, which I now use all the time, which actually worked great on Edna you saw there. They wouldn't do it. All it was a post-hypnotic suggestion, right? That's all it was. Post-hypnotic suggestion. It worked for her once. It worked again. Is that right? Worked for once, worked again. So on the handout I gave you, there's a whole list of hypnotic phenomena. Now, a lot of what we call hypnotic phenomena, and you've been using a long time, you just may not have known that's what it was called, but there's all kinds of hypnotic phenomena. I am greatly indebted, and I highly recommend this book to any of you. This is The Handbook of Hypnotic Phenomena and Psychotherapy by Drs. John and Janet Edgett. Dr. Edgett and I are very good friends. I've trained with him. He spoke at my conference, Heartland Hypnosis Conference, last year, and he's just tremendous. But this book, every chapter is about a different hypnotic phenomenon. It's incredible. It's just an incredible book. It's very helpful, and I owe a great deal about this talk to that particular book. And many people who've read the book will tell you it's a wonderful resource for hypnotists, a wonderful resource, because every chapter has the description of the phenomenon, the history of the phenomenon, the research, which a lot of our trainings lack, the research, has the research about the phenomenon that was been done. Now, the research is a little dated because the book was published in 1995, so what you're really missing out on is all the brain imaging research that has come since then, which, by the way, for hypnosis has been excellent. Dr. David Spiegel of Stanford is the main guy to look up on that. And the brain imaging research is excellent. And that's going to be in the next 40 years, that's going to be the big thing. That's going to be the big thing, all the brain imaging. But this research, there's been a lot of research on hypnosis. A lot of people say, oh, there's no research in hypnosis. That's baloney. There's lots of research in hypnosis, and you just have to know where to go to get it. But every chapter is full of research, and then it includes the indications for use, the contraindications, and also script material that are actually, ways to elicit the phenomenon, and then actual verbatim script material that'll give you illustrations. So I highly recommend the book. I don't sell it. You can go on, honestly, you can go online and get it used for a fraction of what it costs me, just a fraction. So, the name of the book is The Handbook of Hypnotic Phenomena and Psychotherapy. Drs. John and Janet Edgett, both psychologists, and
spell Edgett.
Edgette. And it's on here. And on the handouts too. Yeah. So if you'll take your handout there, let's just walk through some of the hypnotic phenomena. And I'm glad to talk about this, and hopefully we'll get some time for some questions at the end.
Can I grab a handout somewhere?
I think they have them right here. Yeah, there we go. Good. I like the way Edgett breaks it up. He talks first about memory function, amnesia. Now, amnesia is not a good convincer to a subject that they've been hypnotized, because you don't remember what you don't remember. I did a show at Kansas. I got into stage hypnosis eventually too, and I'm like that old Saturday Night Live skit. They had that guy that played professional baseball, and he'd get on the news and go, "Baseball has been very, very good to me." And I'm like that. Hypnosis has been very, very good to me. So now I do stage as well. I was doing a stage show at Kansas Wesleyan University in Salina, Kansas, and I had a couple of students with me, and after the show, these big athletes came up and they were like, "We saw the show, but we just can't believe that's real. We just can't believe. Would you hypnotize?" I said, "Well, I got a couple assistants here. They'll hypnotize you." And so this is the difference. The one student, he listens very closely when I teach. He really learns really good. The other student, his dad was a hypnotist, and he knew everything before he took class. That kind of person. So the student who listens, he dropped these two guys. He told them they hadn't seen each other for 6 months. They had a bromance. Brought them out of hypnosis, and these are huge football players. They're like grabbing each other and hugging each other, and everybody's going nuts. The other guy that thought he knew everything, he's got this young lady, and he's just working with her, and he's got her in hypnosis, and he's giving her amnesia, and bringing her out. And of course, does the amnesia convince her? No. I keep going over and tapping her. You're not going to convince her with amnesia. She doesn't remember what she doesn't remember. The other people watching think she's hypnotized, but who cares what they think? She's the one. She's the one that wants to think. So amnesia is a great technique. I always tell my clients, when you do hypnosis, and this will save you a lot of trouble with your clients, When we're doing hypnosis, we're taking a natural mental process. Everything you do in hypnosis is a natural mental process. For example, when a stage hypnotist gives the people on stage amnesia, so when they go back out in the crowd, they don't remember what they did on stage, they're not doing it for the subject. They're doing it for the audience, because the audience is going, I can't believe it's real, but when they walk back out there and they can't remember what they did, they go, I guess they were hypnotized. See? Well, I always tell people, what's amnesia? Amnesia is the ability to forget. Everybody in this room has at least this much ability to forget. Would you agree? Everybody can forget. I forget things all the time, right? And by the way, some people are really good at forgetting. You know? They're really good at it. But let's say your natural ability to forget is this big. In hypnosis, you can expand that and make it this big. And when people think about what you're doing in hypnosis as a natural mental process that you're enhancing, either expanding or contracting, because with anxiety, you don't want to expand it, you want to what?
Contract.
Contract. But everything you do in hypnosis, so every one of the hypnotic phenomenon, these are natural mental processes that Erickson would tell you we all do every day. That's what his naturalistic principles are all based on. These are all natural mental processes. It's just that something about hypnosis, and no one, by the way, knows why, but there's something about hypnosis that allows us to expand our abilities in ways that we cannot do consciously. Does that make sense? So hypnosis, now I personally believe there's something about the hypnotic state that is just, I think it's unique, and that's why I love hypnotism. I'm all for mindfulness. I'm all for all these other kind of therapeutic approaches. Everything has its place, but there's just something about hypnosis. That you can do things in hypnosis that's hard to do with other modalities. Isn't that true? It's really true. And so when people come to you, that's what they want. Now you can throw in a little mindfulness, you can throw in some cognitive behavioral therapy, you can throw in all kinds of different techniques, but make sure they know they're hypnotized. Dr. David Goleman is a psychiatrist in my community, and he's a brilliant guy. He's written a book on psychiatry, but he's a wonderful Ericksonian hypnotist. This guy called me he knew me through church, so he had my home number, which I don't give my home number to clients. Matter of fact, one of my friends here today said, I called your office, I couldn't get your cell phone. I said, there's a reason for that. Not that I don't want to hear from you, but I don't want my clients to call me home, because this guy calls me at home, talks to me for an hour about his fear of elevators. I kind of got it after 5 minutes, you know what I mean? How long does it take? And then said he also wanted to lose some weight. Well, I said to him, well, you talked to me an hour about this. Maybe you got a real phobia. Why don't you go see, I'll refer you to Dr. Goleman. He's a psychiatrist. He can give you medications if you need it, but he'll send you back to me for the weight, because he sends me people all the time. So a few weeks later, this little guy shows up in my office. He's out in the waiting room, and he's just like, he's just so anxious, I gotta talk to you. Okay, come on in. So he comes to my office, and he just blurts out, that psychiatrist, he didn't hypnotize me. All he did was talk to me. All he did was talk to me. Well, I know Goleman personally, and he's a genius. I mean, this guy is great. And I'm going, okay. Well, how's it going with elevators? Well, I can ride elevators fine. Using very traditional methods of hypnosis that are so overt, so direct, in my case, it took me 3 sessions of weight loss sessions with him to convince him I hypnotized him. And he lost 54 pounds with me. Now, some people have an expectation, and if you don't meet that expectation with a convincer, or somehow help them understand they're hypnotized, they're going to negate the results. Do you see what I mean? Yeah, they're going to negate the results. So, of course, what I did, and I said the same thing to Edge, and I've said the same thing to Dr. Goleman, you got to use some convincers once in a while, because sometimes that Ericksonian approach, as wonderful as it is, he got great results, but the guy was he didn't hypnotize. He didn't hypnotize. See? So, and how many had that? They didn't hypnotize you. Yeah, weight loss clients are great. They come back in. It didn't work. No, I didn't see any changes. Oh, okay. Had any chocolate this week? No. Have you eaten anything after 6 o'clock at night? No. You know where I'm going, right? Same thing with smokers, right? Same thing with smokers. It didn't work. Are you smoking? Well, no, but I was going to quit. I was going to quit. Sleep. I had a great sleep plan this year. I met this lady years ago. I joined the Springfield Ski Club. We went ski trip, and I hadn't seen her since then. That was like 2003. And she's 80 years old now. She comes in, and she couldn't go to sleep before 3 o'clock in the morning. And I said, great, well, I tested her. She's always going to be a good subject. She's never been hypnotized. And So this was how good a hypnotic subject she was, naturally, spontaneously. 80-year-old woman. Without any suggestion on my part to this effect, she had dual arm levitation in the first session. I'm just sitting there going, oh boy, oh boy. What a great subject, right? So I just gave her the post-hypnotic suggestion that each night she'd fall asleep by 12 o'clock. You know, and she comes in next week, she goes, it didn't work, it didn't work. Well, I've learned not to believe people, right? Because it's so subconscious, they aren't conscious sometimes to change. And I said, why do you think it didn't work? Because I knew she was a great subject. Why do you think it worked? She goes, well, I play that CD you gave me, and I don't fall asleep at night. I said, well, that might be because I gave you the CD to help you become a better hypnotic subject. It's on self-hypnosis, the CD I gave you. I said, what time have you been going to bed at night? She goes, oh, every night since left here, I've been asleep by 12 o'clock. I said, do you remember why you paid me $600? Oh, yeah, I wasn't going to sleep till 3, was I? I said, yeah, from then on I was golden. See, isn't that amazing she could forget that? But it happens all the time, doesn't it? It happens all the time. Now, so amnesia. Now, what are some great functions for amnesia? Are smokers good at remembering when to smoke? Many of them are. You know, smoking is based on the principle of association. Now, a bad smoker, they're not regular when they smoke. But a good smoker, they smoke after a meal, they smoke when they first get up in the morning, they'll start naming the times they smoke. If they're good at the principle of association, that means they could potentially be very good at post-hypnotic suggestion, and you could give them amnesia to forget to smoke. The moment you touch the door handle of the truck, you remember, forget to remember, smoke, which is Erickson's, amnesia technique. Amnesia can work great with smoking. Great with smoking. Just remember to forget. You can get all kinds of visualizations. You can do the whole thing about where you open the back door of the mind, you throw out all cravings and urges. And, you can do all. I can do all that. You do all that. So you can do all kinds of cool things. And the next one is hypermnesia. That's the opposite. That's where you remember. That's where you recall. That's where you recall more accurately. More accurately. As you know, there's been some controversy about that because of the research. But let me just put that to rest real quickly. Here's where the controversy comes. A lot of those research projects, they did like random numbers, random colors, random, right? Memory doesn't work that way. You remember things that are attached to emotion. Did you see that wonderful movie, Kingdom of God, about going back to Jerusalem during the Crusades, and the guy found his son, the son didn't even know he had a father, the father's a knight, and he has him kneel, he has him repeat the vows to be a knight, and when he gets done, he goes, bam, smacks him across the face, and he says, that's so you remember it. And he remembered it. He remembered it. Hypermnesia and further research studies have been proven very accurate with hypnosis as long as there's emotion attached. There has to be emotion. You do not remember random numbers, random colors, all that stuff with hypnosis, but you can. Now, the hypermnesia, what about test anxiety? One of my local persons right now that I've had a lot of fun working with, we have Southern Illinois University Medical School in Springfield, and I used to be adjunct faculty there for 4 years, so I get a lot of their students that need help, especially with test anxiety, because as you probably know, to become a medical doctor, you have to take these boards. And I didn't know until I started working with students, the test score you get on those particular board tests determines which specialty they'll let you into. And by the way, you know what the one they all want to be? That cracked me up. They all want to be dermatologists. You know why? Because they work 9 to 5. They work 9 to 5. And they get paid really well. And by the way, I hate to say this, the psychiatrist scores aren't as good. But this young lady came in, she had the worst case of test anxiety I've ever seen. She really did. And she had it all her life. This was not unique to medical school. And so she had actually been asked by the school to take the second year over because she'd not done very well. She did fine in her work. She had not done very well on the tests. So she took her second year over, and that's $40,000, $50,000 a year. So now I've charged her $600 for a few sessions. That doesn't seem like much money. So we're working with her. Well, if someone has a lot of anxiety, they're often naturally a very good hypnotic subject. Because how did they get anxiety in the first place? How many people come into your office, you're really not hypnotizing them, you're de-hypnotizing them. Isn't that true? Yeah. So she's hypnotized herself about tests and all this stuff, and she's, just talking about the test, she'll break into a sweat, and she'll start crying. And, she was just incredible. So, hypnotic subject. So of course, teach her self-hypnosis. I have her put her hand on the shoulder, go put herself in hypnosis anytime she wants to. She's really good at it. Practice, practice. First we're doing get ready for the test, because you can't take out what's not in there. You got to do the study. Get ready for the test, get ready for the test. And then comes time for test. All right. So she passes. She doesn't have to repeat her second year of medical school. This is great. So now she's really excited. So now we're going for the first big board, which is one where this determines what specialty she can be in by how high score you get. This is the one where they make you go in, you have to get fingerprinted, they take your picture, you have to prove it's you, they even do the eye thing. It's just to make, because they don't want anybody else taking the test for the doctor, see. So the test she's going to do is down in St. Louis. Her father's going to take her down there. She's only like 26 years old, she's a young woman. And her father's going to take her down there. She's so upset. So she comes in for the very last session before the test. She's just weeping and sobbing, despite all the good work we've done. And I'm going, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. Now, I told her ahead of time, bring your iPhone, bring your smartphone, and just make a copy of the session. Because it'll be 8 to 12, you'll take the test, and 12 to 1, you get a break, and then you can do the self-hypnosis. And then 1 to 5 is the rest of the test. So that was the plan. So her father takes her down there that morning. She gets out, she is crying, she's sobbing, she's weeping. She leaves the car, she walks in the door, and stops crying. And goes, I can do this. And she texts me that day, which I appreciate. I did get hurt myself. And she texted me that day, and what happened at noon was she played the recording of our session. And somehow, because she's such a good subject, she hadn't remembered the post-hypnotics. The post-hypnotic suggestion was the moment you step across the threshold as you walk in the test center, all the anxiety disappears, and she passes. And she did very well, and she's in a nice specialty now. And now she's back again, because every year they have to keep taking more, more. But she's doing much better, much better. That's all based on her abilities. She had the ability, I just directed it. All direct her abilities. So post-hypnotic suggestion, this is what I tell my students. What are your students, when people come to you as a client, what are they really paying for? Are they paying for the hypnosis? No. They're paying for the post-hypnotic suggestion. I've had people walk in, you have too, they'll say, I don't care if you make me quack like a duck, if you help me quit smoking, lose weight, right? They don't care what they do while they're hypnotized. They want to know what's going to happen after hypnosis. I say there are 2 proofs that hypnosis is real. 2 proofs. One is pain management, because if I say hold out your hand and make your hand numb, can you do it right now? Probably not. But if I do a very, very superficial light hypnotic induction and say hold out your hand, make your hand numb, you can, right? Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's what you can do that in hypnosis. I mean, with the most superficial induction, you can start blocking pain. The second proof, though, is post-hypnotic suggestion. Can you name any other psychotherapy where you can give a suggestion in a session that after the session, a day later, a week later, a month later, even a year later, and this has been verified by research, when the right trigger occurs, that little piece of hypnosis pops spontaneously into that person's reality. It's like a little piece of the hypnosis came back. I'll give you an example. A guy came and see me, and he gave me a nice testimony so I can use his name. He owns Blakely Lawn Insurance, lawn service in Springfield. A very successful guy. He comes in, wants to lose weight. He's like a lot of guys. He gained weight as he got older, but he loved our program because he says, "You have a system. You have a system. That's good. You have a system." And so, okay, we work together. So he loses a bunch of weight. He says, "Would you come speak to my social club? It's called Serotonin Club." So sure. So I go in and I talk to him, and I say, one of the suggestions I gave Mr. Blakely is that whenever he went out to a restaurant, as soon as they served the food to him, before he took a single bite, he'd just take his knife and fork and cut the meal in half. Cut the meal in half. And he'd only eat half. All these people came up after that talk, and they're, he does that. We go to lunch with him. It's so weird. You can see his eyes change and everything. The first year I gave this talk at NGH, 6 people came up after the class immediately and wanted me to hypnotize them, so I charged them $100 one at a time. But one of the ladies, I really did.
Works.
It works, You gotta get paid, right, Larry? Gotta get paid. What's that joke? It's business? Ask Larry about that joke about business. It's good. But anyway, so one of the ladies was a nurse, and so I went to her room. It was a Sunday morning, I remember it, and I hypnotized her for weight loss. She lost 30, she needed to lose 30 more, and she'd been on a plateau. So Sunday night, when the conference was over, I had been asked to go to dinner with a group, and I didn't know that she was going to be in that group. So I show up down in the lobby. Well, here she is, and we're all going to dinner. And I thought, well, I won't say anything, she won't say anything. So we all go to dinner. Went to this Chinese restaurant not too far from here, big circular table. And Ann King, and I know Mark knows Ann King can verify that because she was at the table. And so we order our dinners. They brought out our dinner, and I'm just trying so hard not to laugh. She had ordered a huge bowl of soup. She is playing Moses. She is trying to part the waters with the knife and fork for like 30 seconds. And I'm over there just trying so hard not to laugh. And finally she looks up and she goes, "You did this to me!" So it worked great with solid food. So I changed the suggestion now. I say solid food. But anyway, but those kind of things, your clients like those. Your clients like those. I told you about people would throw up in the weight loss center. The big hypnotic phenomenon there was they used a food aversion. And it was just so powerful. And well, here's what happened. The power of suggestion, the hypnotist sets the boundaries. That's in your NGH definition. It's really true. The hypnotist sets the boundary of the experience. What happened was we had this great script that had this food aversion in it, and I'm reading it. I don't know anything. And so some people, they're so deeply hypnotized, they would actually, in the seminar, sitting in chairs just like you are, throw up. Well, that's bad for the hotel, bad for the person. It wasn't good for me either. So I tell them on the phone calls, I said, and I go, "What are you doing? This was not happening to anybody else's seminars, just mine." Well, the difference is, though, I came out of the church background, and there's a lot of similarities, as most of us would agree, in what we do in church settings and hypnosis. Would you agree? There's a lot of hypnotic stuff happening at church, and some of that will transfer over. And so I think when I read that script, some of that just transferred over, and it was very hypnotic, so they went deep in hypnosis. So they were no help. They did not have any idea what I should do, so I thought, well, let's just try something here. I did know a little bit about psychology, so the next seminar, I just stood up and said, "Now, folks, as we're getting ready to do this hypnosis," I said, "Now, we're going to do this food aversion, and I want everyone to repeat out loud after me. No one will throw up." And they all laughed, And I said, no, I'm serious. I want you to repeat. So they all repeat after me. No one will throw up. Stopped it. If I didn't do it, they'd throw up. What did I learn? I learned you set the boundaries. You set the boundaries. In my sessions, food aversion. I'd say, take your favorite food that you want to cut out of your diet, and I'd cover it with maggots, vomit, human droppings, stuff like that. Yeah, see, she's about to throw up now. Anyway, very good question. Ross asked, was that pre-hypnotic suggestion? In the class I'll teach later today, I'll talk about how to do post-hypnotic suggestion. When does hypnosis begin? The minute they walk in the door, and the truth is before that, when they heard of you, right? I'll show up and do these little stage shows like little after proms like in Iowa and Illinois and stuff. And you'll have some nice parent go, "Oh, I'm here to help you. I'll be your catcher if anybody falls out of the chairs." Well, sir, I really appreciate the thought, but people don't fall out of my chairs. They go, "What do you mean they don't fall out of your chairs?" Like, we had a hypnotist last year, they fell out all the place out of the chair. And they had assistants, and I said, "I don't need an assistant." All you have to do is say, now, in hypnosis, you have a wonderful sense of balance. You may lean right, lean left, lean forward, but no one ever falls out of the chair. They never fall out of the chair. I just did a show Wednesday night at Oklahoma State University for the Chi Omega sorority. This one girl on the very end, big, strong girl, incredible subject, and I actually had girls in the audience going, waving to me to come over because she was like this much of her butt was still in the chair. And they're so afraid, her head's down like this, and she's just going to tumble out of the chair. She never came out of the chair. Why? Because I told her, no one falls out of the chair. That takes care of it. My chairs, when I do a stage show, are bolted to the floor. Not really, but in hypnotic suggestion. Do you see what I'm saying? The hypnotist sets the boundaries of the experience. Now going on, toying with time. How many of you, after the first part of the first time you hypnotized somebody, asked, how long did you feel like it was, right? Time distortion? That convinces them, doesn't it? How many of you had people going, "Oh, I can't believe it was that long. I can't believe it." That was the thing. When we used to do the group seminars, I did learn that. What you do is you'd be right next to the light switch, and you'd be counting them up to 5, and very softly and tenderly you'd be going, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5! And turn on the lights. And you did that for a reason. because you wanted to shock them into this whole thing. Oh my God, how long was it? And you say, how long do you think it was? They say 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. It was always 55 minutes. It didn't change. It was always 55 minutes. I read the script, 55 minutes. That people come out and think, I must have been hypnotized because, that time distortion is powerful. And time distortion can be used in other ways too. It is a wonderful convincer. Now, age regression, of course, there's so many uses for age regression, but many times you can do a light age regression like with smokers, weight loss people, athletes, and you can take them back and they remember that first time or before the first time. And there's some really cool things you can do. Age regression is probably the most frequently used hypnotic phenomenon of all the hypnotic phenomena in psychotherapy. Probably the most frequently used. Age regression, if I may say really quickly, I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but age regression needs to be done skillfully, and you need to have more advanced training to do age regression, but there's really only a few things you do with age regression. It always summarizes down to this. Number one, you're going to return the person to possibly a negative event in their life and allow the client to experience catharsis. Getting rid of those pent-up emotions, right? Sometimes catharsis can be very therapeutic. Sometimes it's not therapeutic. Like, for example, if you have someone with PTSD, I don't recommend that because actually you're just reinforcing the trauma. Number two, you're accessing and amplifying the client's resources. That's where I spend most of my time. Accessing and amplifying the client resources. You want to go back. Now, for example, I get athletes. If you get an athlete, the only people who are going to pay you a lot of money that are athletes are already pretty good. Would you agree? They're already pretty good. You're not going to get that brand new golfer that never golfed. You're going to get that golfer that golfs all the time and spends a lot of money, and they're going to pay you. And somewhere in their past, they were pretty good. So that's what you go back to, obviously, and you get a hold of what they were good at, and you bring it back to now, right? Bring it back to now. And then, and that's basically, you're amplifying these abilities, and you're finding these things from the past. Now, Erickson would do that, like, remember his examples about riding a bike and things like that. Things we all did growing up as children, and he would use those therapeutically. Now, what time you got? Okay, good. Thank you. Now, what are the three messages you always give in age regression? It always boils down to one of these three. One, it's not the client's fault. Little kid, you're abused, it was a bad experience, was it their fault? Strangely, many people think it is. And we have to, no, it was not your fault, right? People have been in war, terrible things happen, and they lived and their buddies died and they feel guilty. It's not their fault. Your buddies would have wanted you to live, you did what you were supposed to do, you survived, you made it out, that kind of thing, not your fault. Number two, normalization. Normalization. You did what anyone would have done to survive in that situation, right? Normalization. You normalize their experience. Normalize their experience. Number three, and this, I think you have to be careful how you do this. How many are familiar with that little poem, Footsteps in the Sand? If you're familiar with that one? That's a perfect example of what I'm about to say, number three. Adding a loving figure to support the client in their memory. And that, in the case of Footsteps in the Sand, obviously we're adding a divine spiritual being, in this case Jesus. But it can be others. But if you actually look at all the age regressions, they're doing one of those three things all the time. That's always what it is. It's not your fault. Normalize the experience, and then possibly add that supportive, loving figure that wasn't there that they needed. But accessing the client resources is cool. Now, if you get somebody that started smoking at 11, it's not as powerful. But if they started smoking at 20, it can be very powerful. If they started smoking at 20, they remember what it was like when they didn't smoke. Now, if they started smoking at 11, they may have a hard time remembering that. Do you know what I mean? But you can go back to before they ever smoked, right? And then you can bring it back to the present where they feel now like they've never smoked before. Like they've never smoked before. And what's really neat about hypnosis is they actually feel like they've never smoked before. Now, does it make sense logically? No. Much of this is counterintuitive, counterlogical, but it works. It's amazing. Now, future progression. Now, a little small typo there. I put in there that part underlined. Most, it says if not all. It should be not all. Get rid of the if. Because Erickson did do age regression, of course. But most of Erickson's interventions were future-oriented. Because you can't change the past. You can change the future. And he was particularly unique at his time, his era in psychotherapy, because almost everything was psychodynamic, Freudian psychoanalysis back then. But here Erickson he's spending more time talking about the future. That was part of his genius, is future progression. We had 4 weight loss clients at one time in Illinois, before the recession. Had one up by Chicago, had one in Bloomington, one I run in Springfield, and then we had one down by St. Louis on the Illinois side of the river, Fairview Heights. And we would keep track pretty closely of how much weight people would lose over different little markers in the weight loss programs. The first week was really of interest to us. How much did they lose the first week? Well, all of a sudden, my brother Terry, who was not a particularly well-trained hypnotist, he had a little training, but he wasn't really unusually well-trained. All of a sudden, Terry, my brother, was getting twice the number of pounds lost on all of his weight loss clients as anybody else, including me, that worked in our company. And it's like, what's going on here? So, what would you do, Ross? I'm going to find out what he's saying, right? Yeah, let's see. So I just listened in outside the door one day, And as soon as I heard it, I went, of course. Our weight loss session was just like all of yours. At the very end, you'd have this scene where they're looking in the mirror and they see themselves at their ideal size, shape, and weight, and they look wonderful, right? And you know what I'm talking about? You've done that? For some reason, and my brother doesn't even know why he did it, he moved that. Nothing else changed in the script. He moved that to right after the induction. And I went, of course. They've never been hypnotized before. They're deep in hypnosis, and the very first hypnotic phenomenon is this future progression where they really not just see themselves in the mirror, they feel it. And then you say, and now you're going to eat vegetables. Okay. And now you're going to exercise. Okay. Because they're going, yes, 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 yes. Because you started with that big yes, with that future progression. So across the board in all 4 clinics, immediately we doubled the number of pounds lost after 1 session. Everyone. Because we, of course, put out the word immediately, change that, make that change. Everybody was losing more weight. Just because of one little placement, the script did not change in content, it changed in how it was arranged. Where that hypnotic phenomenon was so powerful. Future progression is powerful. Yeah, 5. Turn the page real quick. Dissociation, wonderful pain management. Some of these guys know a lot about pain in here. Dissociation. Hypnotic dreaming and daydreaming. If you get a good dreamer, you can do some amazing things. I had one lady who was a gagger, and she had, I didn't know exactly what to do with her. She didn't have a good reason for gagging, but 10 years ago she started gagging. Her life's falling apart 10 years ago, but we couldn't find anything that had to do with gagging. So I just gave her a post-hypnotic suggestion. She had a healing therapeutic dream. She came back the next week. She'd actually been written out her testimony. 10 years ago, in a year where everything was going wrong, husband dying of cancer, all this stuff, she'd forgotten, she'd repressed true memory that she'd gone in for a medical procedure, routine, it went south, they had to hold her down and shove a tube down her throat. That's where the gagging came from. She needed dental work, she couldn't get dental work done, that's why she came to see me. And she has written me other letters since then, still successful today. But going on, catalepsy, you all know about arm levitation, look at anesthesia, analgesia. I love with my weight loss people to do the shrinking stomach. How many guys do a shrinking stomach? Next weight loss client you get, just let them get the hypnosis and then say, now, and here's what I say, because medically you have to be accurate. You really can't make people's stomachs smaller. You know that, right? Okay, you can't do that. So medically you want to say, how you word it's very important. When you overeat, it's just natural that your stomach expands, right? And then you continue talking your little patter and you say, but now you're going to be eating far less than you were eating before. So now, naturally, when you eat less, your stomach then contracts and shrinks. All right? And then I'll say now, right here in the chair, right now, think of, feel, picture, imagine your stomach's getting tighter, contracting, shrinking, smaller, smaller, smaller. It probably works 95% of the time. And it's a great convincer, and also then you tie it with a post-hypnotic suggestion that when the hypnosis is over and you leave this office, this tighter feeling will remain with you. And you'll feel full twice as fast and only half the food. You see what I'm saying? We're good. Now, last thing, the hallucinations, I can talk a lot about that, but, you can do some cool stuff with hallucinations. Anyway, I better open up questions because I'm getting 5 minutes back there. Yeah. Any questions? Be glad to answer anything. Yes, sir.
How do you normalize rate?
I don't think you ever normalize rate. And I don't have, quite honestly, I don't have a lot of experience dealing with that. What I do know is you do not want to re-traumatize a person that has already been through that. And I think that's, unfortunately, in some hypnotic settings, what people do. And it's, you have to treat that carefully with trauma. You certainly have to confront the fact that it happened, and there's a whole process. I would recommend Dr. David Spiegel, psychiatrist. He has 8 C's for dealing with PTSD, and if somebody had rape, good chance that you could use that same protocol. The 8 C's, which include, first comforting, confronting, condensation of the experience. But he goes through the C's, so I'd recommend that. David Spiegel, yes.
Can you mention Heartland briefly?
Heartland Hypnosis Conference is in St. Louis the last weekend of April, and I would love to see any of you there. We have a great time. We do things a little differently than we do here, but it's really a great experience, and I have several of the presenters that have been there in the past few years. This will be our 5th year, and it's really a high-powered conference, and we have a strong clinical track and a strong stage hypnosis track, as well as we have a business track, and we also have a metaphysical track. We keep them separate, and we do give mental health continuing education units to psychologists, counselors, and doctors if they come to the clinical track. So it's a fun conference, and it's very inexpensive and very affordable. And St. Louis, if you've never been there, it's a beautiful place because Forest Park in St. Louis is 3 times the size of Central Park in New York City. Not to mention we have a zoo that is free year-round, and it's the 2nd highest rated zoo in the country after San Diego. 1 minute. Any more questions?
When is it?
The last weekend of April. This year will be April 26th through 28th. April 26th through 28th. And we usually do an NGH certification training leading up to it. So we're always training about 10 or 12 new people there. So, yeah. Any other questions? No questions? Hey, you guys have been wonderful. I'll stick around down the hall if anybody has questions. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Oh, thank you. There's always some extra as well. Oh, yeah.